Hello, and welcome to DNA Empowerment. I am Danielle Anderson, and this is
I am Lyndsy Ray Porter. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
first I want to apologize for not having a podcast last week. Um, I taught a full weekend intensive of astrology for the first time in person and last weekend, and I just didn't have the capacity to do a podcast and that in the same week. So
And that's okay.
sometimes
Let's
that's
be
going to
honest,
happen, you know?
is going to happen. We'd be crazy not to. I mean, that's what you and I preach all the time is like, hey, why would we push and overachieve? And so we
Totally.
should, but then doing it our own selves.
Yeah, exactly. And it was lovely and amazing and wonderful and all the things that hopes and dreams are made of, right?
I'm just
The
glad you're
training,
doing that
like
work again.
yeah, that the people that were there were the perfect people to have there, and it was the first module of three modules that I'm doing, level one kind of, and then level two comes in February. Um, and if more people want to get like on the bus to do that, I'm open to doing another level one in January if there's enough interest. But so this was
You
like
have to take number one first before, yeah, because it
absolutely.
piggybacks on too many
Yep. Yep.
concepts.
So I call my astrology 101, I call it the story of the ego, understanding your personality and how it shows up in the natal chart. And then and that just basically is like, you're going to learn all the signs. You're going to learn about your cardinal cross. You're going to learn about all the personal planets. So that's like moon, sun, Venus, Jupiter, Mercury. I infuse all the different lineages into my training that I've studied. And so there's some Kabbalah in there, and there's a lot of embodied meditation and meditating on the energies and feeling them rather than just learning them intellectually, which I'm really, really stoked on, so that people can really learn how to feel these energies inside of themselves.
Mhm.
Also, the foundation of my astrology training, the beginning of it, was done in yoga seminary. So there's the yogic tradition, there's the Kabbalah tradition, and then there's the evolutionary astrology tradition that I've been doing the most recently. And so it's all infused together. Um, and then like you and I talk about how we both, um, it's an honoring of the feminine to have not everything be masculine, and intellect is masculine. And when you're going through training, there's so much intellect, like you're getting so much knowledge. The training, the way that I've designed it, is we're infusing meditative experience all throughout both days. So it's a 2 day
Mhm.
intensive. Um, so that we're feeling these energies in our bodies, and we're deep, cementing them more in the subconscious, not just
That's so
learning.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, I
So,
was
and
there.
then,
I'm sad.
yeah. And then part two is the story of the soul. So, how your deep self shows up in the natal chart. And in that, we learn the nodes of the moon and, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, Chiron, um, and Uranus, and then how that works together with the personal planets to make a whole. And then part three, which will come in May, is transits, harnessing the power potential in transits. And so that's a whole nother ballgame. So what we talk about in the podcast is the transits, but we do it in a very universal way. So it's not how it's affecting everybody's individual chart. If you take the trainings, then you will understand better how to move through the transits as they apply to your chart specifically. So
Yeah.
anyway, so that's what I was doing.
Fascinating.
I am holding a webinar. It's also my first webinar training. That's just like it's gonna be, I'm gonna say 2 hours, but I promise you I'll go longer than 2 hours because it's what I do. Um, on the astrology of 2025. So that's gonna be over Zoom. And if you aren't available when we're doing it, which is December 30th, um, you can get a recording so you can watch it anytime you want. So if you guys who are listening, if you're interested in that, you can sign up for that at my website, dnaempowerment.com, to learn about all the craziness that's going down next year astrologically, because man, things are going to change. Uh, all of the outer line planets are shifting signs in the same year. So, except for Pluto, which just did.
So that's
So,
not a normal thing. Like it's not like the same things are happening every year. Like so
no.
something like this, like is there like a coming of like a completion of a rotation? Like is it every fit? Oh,
So, like, oh, how'd you get balloons?
I guess if you do this, I don't
Hey,
know.
that so Neptune is beginning a brand new 165-year cycle. It's ingressing into Aries, and the Aries is the beginning of the zodiac. Saturn is beginning a brand new 29 and a half year cycle, moving from Pisces into Aries.
Mhm.
It'll be our first full year with Pluto and Aquarius. Uranus is moving out of Taurus, where it's been for 7.5 years, and into Gemini. So
Mhm.
that's all the
I
outer
always
line planets.
wish I could just like see, because like it makes so much sense. Like during the eclipse, there was obviously a lot of like educational material. Um and it was helping me. It was technically meant for my children, but I'm like, oh hey guys, but I'm like, this is bite size and I get it. Um, but there were, all of these little like you could touch them with your own hands and move them and see how the sun is moving around. It'd be so neat.
Yeah.
It doesn't like I feel like what's her name? Aldro, the lady from Dark Crystal. She has one of those.
Oh,
I need to
yeah.
see
I
how
feel
I would
like
love
so if
for
I
something
show
like
you if I show you what I look at when I do readings, um, it's kind of that. So I don't know if you can see that on the screen. Oh, you can't
it's
see
just
that. God damn it.
glowing.
Just anyway, it's like this, it's the circle and it's got all the little placements moving around. And so when
Uh,
I read for people, that's what I'm looking at. It's
or
not
would
like
the Earth be in
language.
the center? I can't see. Is it like us
Yes,
center and
it's a
then okay,
geocentric perspective. So
got
It's Earth being in the center, which is not what it really is, but it's from a
obviously
geocentric
yeah.
perspective.
Okay,
Everything, yeah. So according to that map,
that's
it is.
fascinating. So you just have one in your pocket, man.
Yeah, but I will tell you, and this leads us into some of the astrology that's happening now and for this upcoming week. Uh,
The things in our pockets aren't going to work very well, are they?
my astrology app crashed for the last week, and I mean, it cut my work off at the knees. I couldn't pull up transits for anybody. So
Mhm.
I had to like reschedule sessions for later in hopes that it will come back online. By the way, we're in Mercury retrograde shadow, and it is a motherfucker of a retrograde coming. Um, if you haven't been able to tell for like the last couple weeks when we've been in its pre-shadow, um, like already technology things are malfunctioning. Um, it's gonna get a lot worse. It stations retrograde on um what is today? The 22nd?
Yeah.
22nd?
Yep.
And it's Friday, Monday. Monday is stationed Monday the 25th. So just in time for us to all be with our larger families for the holiday.
In a nutshell, why does if you have a nutshell version, why does that happen? Why can't technology function in a retrograde? What is the
So it's Mercury retrograde specifically that applies to technology. When other planets station, and let me just say this, I feel like I have to say it every time, and I get kind of tired of saying it, but there's always going to be that one person that listens and's like, planets don't go backwards. I know, again, it's from a geocentric perspective. If we were looking, it appears like it is where it is in its orbit. It's not actually going backwards. But because the observer is not separate from the observed, the way that we experience it as the observer makes a difference in the correlative to our own consciousness.
Mhm.
So, um, Mercury is the aspect of our individual and collective psyches that governs communication and perception. because of that technology, because we use technology to communicate. It also governs cars, modes of transportation, movement, right? And if you, Mercury is rules Gemini, and Gemini is the space in the developmental cycle of the zodiac where, um, and then the developmental cycle of the human being, where we develop language and we become aware of our immediate environment outside of our basic needs. So it's the time period that we start being like, dog, mama, ball, right? And so because of that, it's the language function, which is also the communicative function, which is also the time that we start becoming mobile and we move, right? And so everything, transportation that moves us is also governed by that same energy. That makes sense?
Okay.
So when it goes retrograde, it's not moving forward. It's not progressing. It's like, we're going to make you go a little bit inward and turn your perceptive function in,
Mm-hmm.
re-go over some of this stuff so that you can come back out with a more clear perception.
Mm-hmm. It's like a wintering is how I'm going to store it in my files.
It is absolutely a wintering. Now, this particular retrograde is in the sign of Sagittarius, and Mercury is considered to be in its fall in Sagittarius. Why? Because Sagittarius sits opposite Gemini, which is Mercury's home. Mercury rules Gemini. And so Sagittarius is the polarity of where it feels comfortable and warm and at home. Why does it feel uncomfortable? Why is Sagittarius the polarity of Gemini?
Good
Because
question, Danielle.
Sagittarius, huh?
Good question, Danielle.
Well, if you think about Gemini being like, there's no, it's just learning to learn, right? It's like, it's that, you have little children. It's when they're trying to learn, they're not learning because they're trying to find some higher universal sense of truth. They're just learning to learn. It's experience for the sake of experience. And that's what Mercury wants. Sagittarius is looking for some overarching higher sense of truth, spirituality, something that is specific. Okay.
She got an agenda.
It's got an agenda. Exactly. Yep. It's something to hitch some ideal to hitch your train to so that you can build what comes next from Sagittarius. It's Capricorn. So that you can build whatever it is that you're meant to build in the world in service to what you believe is true.
And this is all going down on Thanksgiving?
Well, it's not the only thing.
Oh man, we need like a hotline.
So Mercury in Sagittarius is uncomfortable because Mercury wants freedom and Sagittarius, like freedom of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And Sagittarius does not want freedom of thought. It is very, very passionate about its view. Right?
I can see the future right now.
So, oh my God, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, technology is going to malfunction. Communication is going to, I know that people like to go out in the evenings, like especially kids that come home from college and they be drinking and they whatever. Oh my God, this is not the year to do that because people are going to be so volatile already. The eruption factor is going to be off the scales. Mercury is at 22 degrees Sagittarius right now. It's stationary there until it stations retrograde on the 25th. Like it's just when a planet stations, it's at its strongest and also we feel like stuck. So again, this is like our access to thinking. By the way, this is happening on my cardinal cross and on top of my Neptune. So if I am not making as much sense as I normally do today during this podcast, I am in the middle of a lot of cloudiness because Mercury thought function is literally on my natal Neptune, which dissolves everything it touches. So thought dissolve, thought dissolve, thought dissolve. That's what I'm muddying my way through right now. It's also where spirit comes through communication. So it must be muddy in order for spirit to come through. So Mercury is also in an opposite, holding an opposition to Jupiter, which rules Sagittarius in Gemini. So Jupiter rules Sagittarius. It is in its fall in Gemini. Mercury rules Gemini. It's in its fall in Sagittarius. They are opposing each other from their opposite sign where they're comfortable during this 3-week period of Mercury retrograde, which is from the 25th through December 15th. And then they're in a T square with Saturn. And so we're meant to be, it's a lot of friction. It's a lot of feelings of magnified Jupiter, feelings of trying to be safe based on our value system, based on what we think is right, what is true, and that being challenged. And us being put in this position of like, we're stuck here and we got to try to talk about it, got to try to, Saturn wants us to work hard right now in Pisces, work hard at empathy and compassion and uniting with the other rather than feeling separate from the other.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, we're always talking about holding two things. I feel like this almost, I always think if you guys don't catch on to this soon, I'll just paint the picture for you now. But like my brain always moves to nature and outdoors. So, it's almost like a forest burning down. Like just because you burn a forest down doesn't mean underneath it there aren't a million seeds that are going to get hit with light. So it, in nature with anything destruction that it's sculpting, right? Like how is anything made? It catches fire, it gets layers of it get pulled away and weathered. We're all made up from the same wind and water. Like we're all, the erosion has been, it's all there. So yeah, that unity, I can see our bodies wanting this, but there is this, obviously we've all just got, we're freshly have layers removed or added. There's been a lot of shifts and changes. So yeah, there is this like vulnerability and like, I need to protect myself and I feel strongly about this thing, but also it's like, I imagine a deforestation and that like the ash is exposed where this very vulnerable layer of newly excavated earth. And so these seeds are very hungry to pop up towards the light, but we're still all rooted in that same bed.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, if you think about, and I love that you always have a nature analogy, and that's your Taurus ascendant. And there's nothing more beautiful. I love it so much.
Buddy.
Yeah. I mean, if we talk about Mercury retrograde being what you said before, it's the wintering of our communication. Mm-hmm. We're going to feel fiery, it's in Sagittarius, about our truth. And we're going to feel triggered about our truth, right? When we're in communication with others, and it's an opposition to Jupiter. Opposition means by somebody outside. So something outside of us is going to trigger us, right? Mm-hmm. The key is go within, right? We're changing the internal perception. That is the whole point. It's not to get into a barking match. It's to change the internal perception. And the internal perception has a lot more going on than just thought. It's in a square to Saturn. That's Earth, right? That's our materialness. Saturn's in Pisces. That's our intuition and it's our emotionality. And so when they're working together, it's a going internal to figure out a change. Squares they want change. Opposites want change. And when Mercury is retrograde, We need to change our own perception, not change that person over there's perception.
Mhm.
We will be triggered from over there to change this perception.
Yeah.
And then when it stations direct, we can, if we've done that work, if we've done the shadow work that goes hand in hand with being triggered, when people are aware of that, which we have no space in our culture that teaches people to be aware of that at all. Um, but we can find it, you know, in certain circles. And then Mercury stations retrograde, and we might be better prepared to have those conversations with more clarity and an ability to unite the polarity, to find a middle, you know, to be able to hold what Gemini wants, where Jupiter is right now. And Jupiter is super uncomfortable in Gemini because Jupiter wants one singular truth. It governs religion. Um, in Gemini, it's like, oh my God, but I have to be able to hold all these different truths at the same time. And I don't know what to do with that as being equally valid, even though they seem not able to coexist.
Mhm. So maybe we all just take little journals to Thanksgiving and we eat so much food, we just keep our mouth full the whole time. Just keep chewing
Mm-hmm.
and have a little journal where you're writing. It's okay to look like a big weirdo this year at Thanksgiving.
Well, and honestly, unfortunately, I have to be realistic about what I see in astrology, right? Um, and oftentimes that means how am I going to put a positive spin on this? Sometimes it's just like the positive spin is you got to do the work because this is going to be hard as hell, and it's hard as hell because the work needs done.
And
You
also
know,
there's a trusting of the greater good, like what's going to happen for the greater good. It's like, you know what? I don't need to show up and control it and manipulate it. I just need to,
totally.
like, it's like I just get to be right now. And that's what wintering is,
Yeah,
just being. We don't need to show up and change. It's not time for a revolution. It's time for quietness in our body. Like it's time to maybe plant seeds of your revolution and inside, but it's like now it's quiet time. It's calm time. It's reflection time. Um, and I think that it's okay. Like you're not, there's just this, there's a weird part, I think, in anybody who hears something or feels something that is in opposition with them. It's like, well, I didn't stand up. I didn't defend it. It's like, there's a time for all things, and
yeah.
right now, um, I think it's important to just trust that, we are going to pull out like macro, like there's like, it if we zoom in on these minuscule little pieces, it seems catastrophic. But really, when you pull back, like we just went to this beautiful museum, the Field Museum in Chicago. Highly
Oh my God, I
suggest
love the
anybody.
Field Museum.
Can I live there? I actually can.
No.
You can stay overnight there. I got to do that one day.
Their death exhibit was
I
mind
know I
blowing.
missed that one. That was like, I would have loved to have seen that. But I, as I was walking through, they have you um, basically you start off 26 billion years ago and then you walk through what it was like on our planet and who was there and how we know that they were there. And so we're all the same age. We're all babies here. None of us know anything, like we, of course, we're just new here. We just started speaking these languages. There's a well of knowledge deep inside of us. Like you're saying, go inside, go there.
Well, and the other piece of that is we're also ancient because
Yes. So
we have
yeah,
existed since it, you know,
yeah, go into the parts that are 26 billion years old that,
and that's
the
not here.
pieces, yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's like it's old, like I always love like when things like ice crystals, we're learning in our homeschooling about how they freeze and how, my son just asked me, he's like, how do they know to freeze in that shape? How do atoms know to do that? And I'm like, it isn't a knowing like it. It's just there's an unfolding that is so much bigger than us. So
It's
there's a part of us that is, like you were saying, a baby is just learning the language. We're still just learning the language. So we really are. An 80-year-old and a 2-year-old are truly just the same age when you
Yeah.
pull back and you go
Yeah.
26 billion years ago.
Well,
It's
and the thing is that we've been cut off from the part of ourselves that intuitively knows things.
Mhm.
And that happened, I'm reading this book right now called Mysteries of the Dark Moon, The Healing Power of the Dark Goddess, that is absolutely blowing my mind. And it is talking about the history of um when there were the goddess religions and how the fall of the goddess religions and the taking over of um I know it's super overused, but the patriarchal structures of spirituality came, and not only did they, and this is like 5,000 years ago, you know and how not only did they take over, they brutally raped, murdered, oppressed anyone who had any connection to female divinity, the female aspect of divinity, right? And we're still living in that. And what that also is it's a correlate to our becoming aware of ourselves, of us becoming human. Like, in other words, we evolved to the place where we grew this part of our brain to be able to use the intellect function. But when that happened, and this, by the way, is the correlate to the fall, right? Eating the tree from the knowledge of the root of good and evil, is we become aware of ourselves. We have intellect. And then all the religions become focused on the intellect, which is a masculine thing, and want to squash the aspects of us that had informed us for all of history prior to then, which is the same thing that exists in animals and the earth, which is this intuitive way of knowing, and saying that it's no longer relevant, it's no longer necessary, it's no longer, and this fear that if we allow it to be, it may come up and squash us,
Yeah. Well,
you know.
humans have a very long history um, of being out of tune with nature because nature is scary to humans. Humans can't control it. There's too much chaos
Right.
and vulnerability. So there is a lot of fear, oh, the fear of the woods, the fear of the night, the fear.
But
But
that
because
came with
there's a,
us
yeah,
evolving intellect.
yeah.
It really
And
did. It
there's a
wasn't before that.
disconnection. We see
Yeah.
ourselves separate from nature when really, like, I loved seeing Jane Goodall. She slept. She just would sleep, lay on the ground, and go to bed in the middle of the jungle. And now, like, we can't even sleep. We wouldn't sleep on our front porches. They're scary.
Mostly because we're afraid of humans.
Own selves.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, it's not nature things we're scared of anymore. It's each
yeah.
other. And
I
that's that correlate of, it really is that, because prior to, when we were connected to the goddess religions, that when spirituality like that governed, there was no there was no fear of nature. We knew we were part of nature because that's a feminine knowing. It's an intuitive knowing that's not of the mind. And our minds being so focused in our intellectual mind, has cut us off totally. All of us, whether we're men, women, anywhere in between, right? Whatever we are, we've all been, by being a product of this culture, society, age that we're in,
yeah.
masculine dominant, because we're from the neck up and that's it, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So, which leads me into, well, first I wanted to say there's a lot of fire this coming week. We're looking at it, we're moving through a grand trine in fire, and fire, we all know what fire is. Fire can be it's aggression, it's assertion, it's energy, it's focus, it's passion, it's um action, right? We're through this holiday week upcoming, and on Thanksgiving specifically, there's a grand fire trine between Mars, which is also slowing down to a standstill to retrograde in Leo, the north node of the moon in Aries, and the sun in Sagittarius, forming a kite on Thanksgiving with that south node of the moon in Libra, which the tail, the kite, that Libra part of the equation is like all this fire is shooting into that south node, which is a release point anyway. And in Libra, it's letting go of relationship. It's like all this fire, it's all working together to be brave, to stand up for what we believe in, to create based on our beliefs, to assert Mars and Leo, and self-express. And then over here is this south node that's like, oh, I'm gonna, because of all this, and that's the kite. So if you can see that, the kite is like that. It's anyway, it's a sextile relationship to two of those points. And so it's either we are going to let go of actual relationships, or we are going to let go of places we don't hold appropriate boundaries in relationships. We are going to let go of Libra tendencies, which is to put other people's comfort over our own, or we'll do all of it. It's just it's in the chart, so I know it's going to happen. You know, and that's just not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a
No,
thing.
it's dismantling things that no
Yeah.
longer align
Mm-hmm.
with the art that we are. I mean, again, I'm looking at it as a mother, I'm like, I feel like I always listen with like the mother ears, and it seems as if, my loved ones, my children, my people are going to do themselves a service. Is it going to be comfortable? No, it's going to suck. But in the end, they're going to find ears that hear their voices. They're going to find an audience for their song. They're going to find
Mm-hmm.
the moves for their dance. And it is so fascinating to me. I had this thought. I think we always are going to drift over to these waters. It's just going to happen. Of the orgasm. And to me, orgasm and meditation, actually like clearing your mind, are the same thing, in my opinion. That space that you go to, I think also it's the same space that as a musician you disappear to when
Yes.
you're lost.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure there's many names for it, but I was thinking about that, because again, thinking about even flowers, how they give off an electrical buzz. You can look up, David Attenborough talks about this. They're giving off an electrical buzz, but the minute that the bee comes and it's been pollinated, the buzz goes away until it's rebooted.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the same. I think all of these things, before this disappearing into a place that is the part of us that never dies, the person that sits behind the thoughts,
Reality.
the divine part, yeah, that's the ancient part of us that is just so beautiful. And we don't get to go there often, and that's what we're kind of talking about.
Yep.
We live in a land of capitalism and control, and like the colonizer brain, we've had to survive through that, so we don't get to go to this place often. If we do, it's taboo, or it's so tricky and challenging. Whether it's time or perversion, whatever keeps us from this sacred place. But so to me, the reason I bring all this up is that this is kind of what this feels like. There's this intention inside of our bodies that we know what we want, where we want to go, and it feels powerful, and we feel like a seed getting ready to crack open, like the lights kind of hitting us.
Yep.
We're in this dark, again, a seed. It's not just about the sun hitting, it's the dark and the light working together.
Yeah.
Both of them. So to me, as you're explaining this all feels very much so like that, like the orgasm. It's like you're aligning yourself with an intention. There is a movement or a friction before this grand release of disappearance into your your deep knowing, your the
Yeah.
meditation,
The
the
the unfortunate thing, in an ideal world, yes, or an ideal situation, yes.
yeah,
The unfortunate thing is that the way that we all tend to move through our culture and our society is that we're all so overstimulated and exhausted that we don't have access to that,
yeah.
and it's like the fear, it's we're so fear motivated. We're so fear motivated. Um, and we've got to figure out a way to not be.
Hmm.
And it really has to do with the illusion of control, because control really is an illusion. We have
Hmm.
no control. It's leaning into trust. And the only way to do that from an experiential point of view is to move towards what we're afraid
Hmm.
of intentionally in order to learn that we're bigger than the fear.
Hmm.
But otherwise, we spend all this time trying to avoid the things that we're afraid of. And,
Yep.
and, and we spend entire lifetimes, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, distracting ourselves from discomfort, distracting ourselves from pain, trying to avoid fear. Really, power comes from personal power, which if you talk to anybody, if you talk to like my friend K2, for example, or anybody that I know that's really a rooted human, they don't move. Their power is not the I, K2 power. It's so much deeper than that. They have learned that they are connected to an aspect of oneness
Hmm.
that they can lean into and that will move them and that they can fall into. And the more you move towards whatever it is you're afraid of, the less you get, the less that you're afraid.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you can't know in your body, know it until you've experienced it. You cannot intellectualize your way through it. You cannot think, you can grasp the concept. But yeah, the more I do brave things, the less I'll be afraid.
Hmm.
Your body is still going to be revolting like crazy. People that make, people will become actually physically ill.
Yeah, your body's trying to
You know,
protect you. I mean, it's really a beautiful process. Like, I think a lot of times we gaslight our poor bodies. They're truly just these ancient, like they're sculpted. Like I look at a mountain, and it's a beautiful mountain, right? How do you think that mountain got there? Through pain and agony and
yeah.
erosion and plates
Mhm.
shifting. So we literally have been given this vessel that's gone through all of that, and it knows there's like old stories in these bodies. And so the minute that we go towards fear, it's like, oh, go, I gotta pull you in. Come on, come back to this familiar hell. I know it's horrible here, but like, this is safe. This is safe. I know that whatever
Yes.
you're ill.
Mhm.
It's like, it's the poor things trying to help us.
Yeah. And
And
so what Mercury retrograde is wanting us to do is to rethink our relationship to truth. What's true?
mhm, yeah. Um,
We all desperately need that right now. And instead of externalizing
yeah.
our truth, rethink. Mercury, rethink. In Sagittarius, truth.
Hmm.
In Sagittarius, higher truth, connection to spirit. Rethink higher truth. Rethink connection to spirit. In a square to Saturn, rethink the way that our foundations, Saturn, are connected to our truth. And on some level, we have to dissolve the foundations. That's Pisces, where Saturn sits, in order to reach a Jupiter on the opposite side, higher truth that encompasses everybody's truths, Gemini. So
Hmm.
that's that. I want to talk about, is it good? You don't mind my segue.
Drum roll.
I want to talk about my perspective of Pluto moving into Aquarius,
And why? What do you mean your perspective?
because various different astrologers have very different perspectives on this. Because Pluto, you know, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was was during the American Revolution. It was like Pluto was at the last degrees of Capricorn when on July 4th, 1776. And then it bumped into Aquarius after that.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know. None of us have lived through it before. We can look at history and be like, oh, yeah, there was the American Revolution and there was the French Revolution, and all these things happened while Pluto was in Aquarius. So,
Mm-hmm.
based on historical data of what has happened during Pluto's ingress and time in Aquarius, we can make predictions. That's what astrology is. On some level, it's predictions based on cycles, right? Um, I have a little bit different perspective. A lot of people have been saying, because it gets hits, like, and not, it's probably not just because it gets hits, but it's also because we're looking for hope. Like, we're reaching for hope. And Aquarius, we all think about the Aquarian age. By the way, Pluto and Aquarius is not the same thing as the Aquarian age. So let me dispel that. The Aquarian age has to do with the precession of the equinoxes, totally different thing. It's a 2,500-year approximate chunk of time that will be the Aquarian age. We're in the breaking down of the Piscean age right now, where we will be getting to that, but it is totally different. Pluto is only in Aquarius only for 20 years. So,
And I think something to add here that I found interesting as I'm like a baby when it comes to this subject listening is that, you can look at a place, like you could go to where the American Revolution was unfolding and type in, its birthday, the birthday of the United States, and look at its astrology. So then, on the flip side of that, you could probably go over to England, what was happening, the oppressor, what was
yeah.
going on in their chart.
Yep.
So that was, to me, that was like a aha moment of like, oh, okay, thought just people like with like, a life, a body, a human body life. But it's like, no, I guess lands and, stories, like those are human bodies. Those
It's
are,
a snapshot of a moment
yeah.
in time. And so that's one of the first things that I teach when I do astrology trainings is, I was born October 14th, 1977. I'm sure that there was like, I don't know, a chipmunk born at that same moment at 4:23 in the morning. We have the same birth chart. What makes the difference? It's the consciousness that comes through it, through that map, right? And yes, organizations, institutions, countries, governments, everything has a birth chart. I have the United States in my phone. I know that Mars is about to retrograde across, the United States sun is in Cancer. We're in for a wild 6 months in this country. Obviously, right? But we've been knowing
a lot of
that,
change.
Yeah. So in order to look at Pluto's time in Aquarius for the next 20 years, it's now there officially. It bumped into there on the 19th.
Jupiter just came into the podcast.
Hi, Jupiter.
Hi.
Hi.
So in order to so on the 19th, Pluto bumped into Aquarius, and it's going to be there until 2044. Yeah. It has been in Capricorn with a little brief spell in Aquarius, and then a retrograde happened and went back into Capricorn since 2008. So I want to talk about what happened during Pluto in Capricorn first, so that we can then apply that to the language of Pluto in Aquarius.
Okay.
What does Pluto do? What is Pluto's function? Pluto's function is to dig up everything in the unconscious so that it can be seen on the surface. Most specifically, those things in the unconscious that are standing in the way of evolution, that are standing in the way of the highest expression of that aspect that it's in. Okay? It is the alchemist, ideally. Pluto is the planet of power. In 2008, in Capricorn, since 2008, it has been pulling out of the collective consciousness all of the malfunctioning hidden aspects of our governments, our institutions, the foundations that we live within, like the structures that we live within. That's Capricorn. Okay. It hasn't fixed them. We just are seeing it's bringing what was in the dark to the light. What happened? The bank, the financial crash, right? The bailing out the banks, too big to fail. We have seen the underbelly dark side of our government and the institutions that we all live and breathe by. They have not been fixed, right? And this is collective. I'm speaking collectively. So then now we have Pluto and Aquarius. And I just am not on board with everybody that's like, oh, it's going to bring the Aquarian age and everything's going to get better. And we're going to, not necessarily, maybe, not necessarily. What it's going to do is it's now going to bring Aquarian blockages out of the darkness. Darkness meaning just what's in our unconscious we can't see on the surface. What's that going to be? What are the collective Aquarian things? It's going to be the dark side of our echo chambers, the communities that we are in. Aquarius is community, being in community with only people that think the way that we do. Thought. Aquarius is thought. Mm-hmm. Community. We are going to see in real time how damaging that is to be in communities where people all think the same as us. We are going to see the dark side of technology. That's Aquarius. The kids that have been growing up like this, they will become adults and we will see how their brains are different because of it. And I say that and I feel very heavy when I say that. Mm-hmm. And there's no hate on anybody that has their kids on screens, right? Everything within balance. My kids have screens too.
And also, I mean, all the AI and like I was just sitting down with my boys and explaining to them, you know, before AI, which I mean, probably the beginning of their life, they're 8 and 5. It didn't exist, right? So you could see a picture and for the most part believe that, or a video, or, you know, but now they're like gluing Carrie Fisher's face on and Princess Leia, even though she died, is still acting, you know, like, so it's wild to me that we were literally just in a window where we didn't really have to use mythology to understand things like the ancient Greek gods and Egyptians and Romans. We had, you know, things like the Field Museum that was like, well, here's this, and this is how we carbon dated it. And now we're moving into this age where I'm teaching my children, but I'm like, this is wild, you know, like there's Chat GPT, there's all of these robots and computers. And how do you, you know, like I remember taking classes where it was like, well, this is how you get a reliable source. I mean, that there's just so much. There is so much. So it is so crazy.
Well, and here's the thing. Okay. So, and this is full circle again. Aquarius is thought, communication with language, and nothing else. And we're going to see the shadow side of that, of all of our communication being done on social media, where all the other elements of communication besides words are absent. So when you and I are together, our fields merge and we can feel each other's energy and we can feel in our bodies what is happening with the other. We can sense, our sensing, our felt sense, our intuition is online, right? In the Aquarian, in Pluto and Aquarius, we are going to see the dark side of so much communication happening with language only, thought only, removing every other aspect of being human.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in how do we each move through this individually? We have to individuate. Aquarius rules in the individuation process. The way to work with Pluto is to take your power back. Pluto is power. Where does your power come from? Individuating, which means going into your deep self, finding where you are blocked from your own intuition because of conditioning, and finding who you really are deep
Mm-hmm.
down, outside of all the conditioning. And ideally, the reason that the Aquarian age, like we always talk about the Aquarian age, why is the Aquarian age going to be so amazing? Because Aquarius is a space, two things. One, where we can have a healthy sense of detachment from everything else that we connect ourselves as being, from identity entirely. I am not Danielle. I am the universe experiencing itself through Danielle. Aquarius is the space where we learn that. So, by nature of that, if in the Aquarian age, everyone comes to that realization and they have this detachment from their Danielle, we all can coexist with all the differences without a demand that everybody else fit into the same package, right? That's the humanitarian of Aquarius, because the sign of the humanitarian, it's the water bearer.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can individually, first of all, we've got to get present. We've got to get present with what is, right? And ironically, my dogs are going to start losing their minds because my kids are coming home. But,
Can't hear him.
huh?
I can't
You
hear
can't
him.
hear them?
Mm-mm.
That's amazing. So anyway, it's not that I'm saying that technology is bad. It's not.
We're
But
gonna
there's a
see
dark side of
what,
everything. Yeah.
yeah,
And
but we don't
collectively,
know.
yeah,
We get to see that.
we have seen collectively since 2008 the problems that we were not consciously aware of in our institutions, governments, banking systems. We haven't fixed it. While Pluto's in Aquarius, we're going to see the problems with technology, with being in our echo chamber communities. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to fix it. We're going to become aware of it. But awareness is the first step. We have to be aware first that there's even a problem, right? Individually, wherever Aquarius is in your chart, you can expect whatever part of your life that rules, you can expect to be going through some really hard lessons that is trying to get rid of your conditioning. So, like, I have Aquarius on it rules my sixth house, which is health. And work, daily routine, wouldn't you know it? I found out this week that I may have to have my uterus removed. Boom. Hey, there you are, Pluto.
These are the kind of things you could tell me before we start talking about this. That's just okay. I just found out too, guys. Like,
So, yeah, so I have, I just found
my,
out that I have growths on my uterus. We don't know what they are yet. And but here's the other cool thing, right? I've been knowing that I'm having a lunar eclipse hit my Venus in my first house of my body in March. And I'm like, something is gonna hit me then. I wonder what it's gonna be.
And now you know what it is, huh?
Yeah. Last time this happened, same transit, same transit. Last time this happened, South Node on my Venus, 18 and a half years ago, approximately, I lost half my thyroid. Why? Venus in my first house, I am not supposed to be forcing my way through the world. I am supposed to surrender through life. I was doing too much. I'm doing too much now. My
Mhm.
body rebels. First house is the body. Venus wants me to flow. And I've been Marsin because we live in a society of Mars.
We do. And that's like, this is something that is so profound to hear out loud. So just to put into perspective, for me, the I'm new to the whole Aquarian thing, but that to me is what's on the other side of the Om and meditation, where the musician goes and disappears to.
Mhm.
It's the after the orgasm. That to me is the me outside of me. That is where we all go.
Yeah.
It's so that place, that's the place where we are truly aligned with ourselves. And it's so funny to me right now. Um, I'm raising a child who doesn't do well in our society. And it's very obvious to me again and again and again. And the world tells me, oh, well, you're not preparing him for the world. You need to toughen him up and you need to push him through and you need to, well, you know what? I did that and he wouldn't be well. He would be chronically ill. He would not. And I, again, he doesn't like have, a clear, like, oh, I see that. I can put that's this illness. Um, but I'm his parent, and I mean, his sister sees it, his friends see it.
Mm-hmm.
After pushing him through 7 hours in a cinder block building with fluorescent lighting, needing to sit still, sit crisscross
Mm-hmm.
applesauce, he's not okay. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's the thing where we're living in a world that is pushing us outside of our bodies and what our bodies are saying because it wants us to get in line, make money, do, create, make, be, how much are you worth? Or, I was really fascinated. I was having a conversation with somebody and they were like, well, their time is worth a lot. And it was almost as if that don't bother them, their time is worth a lot, my time isn't worth a lot. In our But it's a true statement. my
Mm-hmm.
my time, what I have to provide for the world, the price tag is low, like
Yeah.
how much are people going to play for a song for mother, some more, for
How do you
schooling.
do
I'm making things and it just like
that?
it's, I don't know, it likes me. But yeah, so of course we're getting sick because our system has us all line up. It's a one size fits all, sip the juice. The juice isn't good for everybody. Some people are doing okay, um thriving even at playing in this, but I see that there's a lot of people who aren't well. But when we're forced outside of our bodies, into these systems where it's like, oh, you go into the bathroom's inconvenient. Maybe, like they're
Yeah.
telling children to stop drinking so much water. And I get it, like I see why they're saying that, but I'm also like, what the hell? Like we're
Yeah.
trying to teach.
I mean, and that's part of this Pluto and Capricorn thing is our schools are
Yeah.
that's one of the institutions, right?
Yeah. I
That
think
is
of many institutions that
severely
aren't being
unhealthy.
hit.
And no hate on teachers because I love teachers
Oh,
more than
yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
But
The hands are tough.
they are trying to exist within a system and they know this.
Yeah.
You talk to any teacher, they know this. They're trying to exist within a system that is not functional.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's very, very sad. What I can say is that space you talk about, that orgasmic space, that space when you're creating art, I'm there most of the time now because of the work that I've done. I am without thought most of the time. When I make commitments based on absorbing other people's definition, which is very easy for me because I'm so open, because I'm a projector, if we're talking human design, right? which I will have a tendency to fall into now and then, which I just have over the course of the last couple months, right? Actually, for the last couple of years, I've fallen into it again. Um, I lose access to my gifts. I literally lose access to my gifts because I do things for other people because I feel like I should. And then I burn out and I do not have the vision that I've been gifted with. I have been gifted with an ability to see that which is unseen. And if I tire myself out, it's gone. So coming back and my body is now like, hey, you didn't listen before. Now you're going to listen. And I know this stuff. I teach this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm mostly without thought. Like I can go totally thought free, and that's the access point to that transcendent space. It really is. Close your eyes. Thought free. You're flying. Also orgasm.
It's all we need work.
But here's the thing though, so now it's like reset. Okay, this has hit me. It's a reset. I have to make some choices. I have to let some things go. I have to disappoint some people. South Node in Libra, right?
Get to disappoint some people, but also to honor yourself.
To honor myself.
And in the long run, honor others around you for doing us all a favor by
doing what I'm meant to do in the world.
Yeah. Like that's
Yeah.
the good stuff right there. So
yeah, I can't show up adequately for clients if I'm giving my energy to many other spaces. I can't. And I can't show up adequately for my kids with my sight. And by my sight, I mean the things that I see, the gifts that I have. I see the inner workings that are going on behind the scenes of reality. And I know that sounds crazy and weird, but you know what? You wouldn't be listening to this podcast. Maybe you are, if you thought that was too crazy and weird. And that's what I have to offer the world and individuals who are struggling to help them see things they can't see. And if I am making commitments that are not in alignment with that and exhausting me, then I can't do that work, which is what I'm here to do. And so that's the Aquarian lesson. That's the Pluto and Aquarius lesson. In a nutshell, individuate. My individuation process has brought me to this space where I know myself. I know that I am not meant to be the worker bee, that I physically cannot do it. I know what my gifts are. I know myself underneath all the conditioning. And that gives me the power to move through the world doing it. In the face of other people thinking I'm weird, other people thinking I'm off my rocker, because let me tell you what, that's the story of my fucking life. And that's all right. Like, I don't even care. I don't care anymore. I think it's kind of funny. It's funny. I was given the gift of being born into a family where I had to be alone a lot and learn my deep self in order to feel comfort. I was given the gift of going to a Catholic school where everybody else had the same belief system and I challenged it and was treated like hell by all the teachers and all the parents of my friends. I was given the gift of understanding through those experiences that when you are in a room with a bunch of people who think the same way and look the same way, there is danger. And now I know that in my adult life. And so I look for rooms where there is difference. And I know that if I'm in a room where there is not difference, there is danger. So that is Pluto and Aquarius. That is the power of Pluto and Aquarius.
Bringing it back to nature. Here comes Lyndsy. I'm imagining a lawn full of just grass, a monoculture, I've been saying
Yeah.
that exact same thing, but not in a room of people, of plant life where things are just like, so manicured and meticulous. In nature, if there's not diversity, it's ill.
Yeah.
And if it's not ill yet, a pathogen is on its way because you're setting yourself up to be when, again, relate it how you will, when there is a monoculture of something,
That's why the
corn,
soil is dead
soybeans,
outside my
yeah,
window.
absolutely. There's no
Mhm.
diversity in the soil, and also these pathogens, they can figure out very quickly how to massacre and murder these monocultures because they're what happens to this one thing will happen to that and that and that and that. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if you come up against diversity, you can't just wipe it all out. So, oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
You know what I was going to tell you that you're going to think this is funny. This is my Aquarian way of doing anything related to gardening. So, the soil that my roses are in is problematic, right? I've decided this is what I've been doing. Whenever I buy cut flowers, which I've been doing weekly now to have in our dining room, whatever.
I love that. What a treat.
As they're dying, I am tossing them on that soil, and they're all different all the time. I also am tossing like all of our citrus peels and fruit that doesn't get used, those go there too. I'm just like piling it with stuff that is like not meat, not dairy, not stuff that I know. Even some eggshells are going out there. It's
Okay.
like my compost that's not really a full compost, but I'm
Yeah.
like, they're gonna be all right there. I'm just gonna put them there. You know what's the other thing I was gonna ask you? Somebody gifted me an aloe plant this week.
Ooh.
Who or ooh?
Who? No, I said ooh.
How do I not kill it?
Don't overwater it. It's hard. Things that are already juicy, they don't need a lot of water.
Okay. When
Ooh, you
should I
can
water
like once a month,
it? Okay.
and you can let it butt chug. You know what butt chug is?
No, but I
You can
love it. I
water. You
mean,
water the
not when
bottom.
it comes to plants.
Okay, that's we'll talk about that later. So you can two things. You can we'll just stick with one. Just have like a little tray like once a month, like a terra. And I always put succulent things like that in terracotta. Um,
Okay.
a whole separate thing. But yeah, just put a little bit of water in the bottom and it'll slurp it up from the bottom. It'll take it
Oh,
from
that's
its
a great
butt.
idea. Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, just like
Should
once
I
a
do
month,
that with
no
snake
more.
plants too?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
All most plants like butt chug because then they get to choose how much water they drink versus you. But you would want to, yeah, snake plants again just once a month. They're on the same trajectory as succulents. So most people kill snake plants and succulents because they water them too much.
So I've been really good at keeping my snake plant alive,
Good.
but I have historically
Sure.
killed aloe. And so I don't want to kill this, especially because it is a gift from one of my very favorite humans who, if
Yeah.
you're local to Fort Wayne, Lindy Guevara, she is Lindy Reiki Master on Instagram. She is brilliant human and she is so gifted in her craft. And she gifted me this after a Reiki session earlier this week. And I want to um, help it to flourish as
Yeah.
best I can. So,
Clay pot, get some pebbles on top. Yeah, and don't overwater it. It'll be fine. And then you
awesome.
can cut little bits. You can teach how to turn it into hand sanitizer. I'm making some right now with aloe. Yeah, you just blend it up, put it alcohol, your favorite essential oil,
See, that sounds great to me. I
vegetable
love it.
glycerin. Yeah, it's nice. I'm making Christmas gifts right now. And
And if it dies, it's going to go out with the roses.
I love it's almost like a threat to the roses. They're like, okay, we get it. Like this will be us if we don't like shave it up.
You know what? They bloom amazing, but there's something that keeps eating all the leaves, and it's not anything that I see during the day. And so, we've been through this, but
Yeah.
I'll figure it out. I got this new stuff I'm going to use next year in spring, and I'm excited. Some natural stuff. I got it. Um, Swizzle
I
Market.
love Swizzle. I was there
Yeah.
yesterday and I'm going there in a little bit. Um,
Yay.
I'm imagining again, because this is how all of our brains should work, right? Like, just kidding. Um, like right now you have these beautiful things that you cherish and you love so much, but the leaves that, provide it with food and nutrients are getting nibbled on and you don't know what it is. So you're almost tossing these other like discarded love poems and stories at its feet. It's like, hey, like I know these things that you use to eat sunshine are just getting gobbled up. So here are some discarded
Nutrients, ideally,
yeah, like
right?
into your roots. Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that it would be nice to figure out what the heck is going on, but sometimes we don't always
Yeah.
know what it is. And until we don't, find another way. And another thing I wanted to say, um, before we like leave this, I think, it's like lean into the fear. And I know that that's really uncomfortable for some people, for everybody, I would imagine.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, Something that I learned this year is not only like leaning into the fear, but also loving and nurturing the parts of yourself that you don't want anyone else to see. Like really go not trying to like push that down and shove that down. Because though I feel like those are the parts of me that keep me from my fear. And I do have a visitor now too.
I
Hi,
do.
um,
Zoe.
hi Zoe. Um, so yeah, like I feel like this year I have been learning that everybody has parts of themselves that they're not proud of, that they want to hide, that they want to make go away. And really we just end up repressing them and they get bigger. And then you
Yes.
don't have the
Huh?
tools to go into the fear and feel brave because you feel like there's this thing in your closet. Like, well, nobody else is grumpy and mean and irritable. It's just me. I'm the only one that does this. Like I need to,
Yeah.
and then I don't have the tools and the bravery to go into the fear head on, feeling like a badass because I have these things that I'm like try. It's like I like letting it all the parts of you
Yeah.
show and be brave and saying, hey, grumpy Lyndsy, irritable Lyndsy, badass Lyndsy, silly Lyndsy, let's all show up here. We're all going. We're all on this team. We're all here. There's many layers of ourselves that sit around the round table of our mind, and they all need to be on board. Nobody's hiding in the shadows. We're all going into the
Yep.
darkness together. Um,
Well, and that's depth work, right? It's like when you're grumpy, you don't shove down grumpy. You ideally you open it up and you
yeah,
feel grumpy and you invite grumpy in and then you say to the mind, which is not grumpy, it's the thoughts about grumpy. You say to the mind, I don't need the storyline to distract me from feeling grumpy. I'm gonna feel grumpy. And grumpy is in the body.
yeah,
And so you feel grumpy and that's an embodied experience. And that's just an example, right?
yeah.
But knowing that the intellect, the mind, has created a story about grumpy that you needed somewhere developmentally to
To
in
keep you
order
safe.
to navigate an environment that wasn't safe for you to allow grumpy to be grumpy.
Yeah. And I before I would listen to people say things like this, that, give it space. And I'm like, what the hell does it mean to give it space? Do you mean to make it a sandwich? Would that be peanut butter and jelly? Like I would get so annoyed. I'm like, I want to do this work. I don't know how. I don't know how to give grumpy space. Okay. Like, so um I was really fortunate to stumble upon in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Ruth Fear Now. I love the way her methodology, and I can't suggest it enough. And she's so amazing at like, honestly, if I'm doing my job, you should know how to do what I'm doing with you. But her whole, it's that story, her book, I
What's it called again?
therapeutic mindfulness by
Yes.
Ruth Fear Now. She's here in Fort Wayne. I cannot suggest her work enough. Oh my gosh, like literally got excavated from like a stone wall I was stuck inside of,
Mm-hmm.
thanks to her work. But basically, what similar to what you just said, it's using EMDR, crossing your hands, tapping, to
Yep.
get both sides of the brain online. But you get the story going, get
Mm-hmm.
the grumpy going, the sad going, the fear going. But then what she does while you're doing that, yeah, you drop out of the mind
Yep.
into the
Into the body.
body and you
Yep.
describe the feeling and you allow it.
Yep.
Describing it. Is it purple? Is it big? Is it
Yep.
sharp?
Where is it in your
Yeah.
body?
Does it have an age? Just
Mm-hmm.
describing it. and then
Yes.
allowing it. Hey, I see you feeling in my belly that's purple and pointy and is maybe 13 years old, whatever you can get
Yeah.
grasp, however you can describe it, and then just allowing it. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. You can get bigger if you need to. I'm going
Yep.
to allow you to throw a temper tantrum in my body, and I'm just going to be here with you, and I'm going to allow you. Okay. And then
Yep.
you're doing this, you're rewiring these feelings because both
Yeah.
sides of the brain are on
Yep.
left, right, and they're recreating memories. It's so beautiful. And another book that I love is The Body Keeps the Score. And it just, that's how you
That's
make space for it.
exactly, that is exactly how I guide people through shadow work,
I love that.
which ironically is just something I figured out doing it myself, but on myself. But yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So it's really cool to hear that. I know I've referred lots of people to Ruth, and Ruth is a personal friend.
Amazing.
She's amazing.
Amazing.
Um,
Wow.
but yeah, it's kind of fun to hear that what she's doing is also what I'm doing and just calling it something different,
Yeah. And
which
she
is,
has her own, yeah, like
yeah,
little, that
which
was a,
is,
yeah.
yeah,
And
which is, I
you
mean,
do your
like
own Danny thing. She
I've
does.
studied so many different lineages, like spiritual lineages. There is some universal thing moving through all of them that is the same. It's the same. And I'm not talking about the Ten Commandments. I'm not talking about morality. I'm not talking about morality. I'm talking about accessing the unconscious parts of ourselves, all of the mystical traditions, whether that's Sufi, whether it's mystical Christianity, Gnostic Christianity, whether it's the Vedic tradition, right? Whether it's Kabbalah, they're all teaching the exact same stuff through a different system. But I am telling you, it's the same universal consciousness coming through different languages and different societies and different cultures, which is how I know for sure. And it's the same thing with like what I do with clients being so similar to what Ruth does. It's not Ruth, it's not Danielle. It's this universal intelligence that we have cleared ourselves enough to allow it to come through us.
Mhm.
Um, and that's the thing that we trust. That's Jupiter. Jupiter is separate from the thinking mind. It's like it's something bigger, a bigger intelligence coming through. So, but yeah, that's exactly it. And I love that you broke it down in the way that you have done the work,
Mhm.
and it's universal. Like
Yeah.
people can do it. People can do it. And the thing to catch is you bring the storyline up enough to feel the feeling in your body. Notice that the storyline wants to stay attached. And this is what I often do is I'll say, thank it for protecting you all this time. You don't need it to protect you right now in this moment.
See, allowing it.
You just allow the feeling. Yeah. The thought about it is just a distraction from the feeling.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's what, when I say grumpy, I'm like, grumpy exists in your body somewhere.
Yeah. And I think that's the funky thing about this is that, what happens when you tell a child, like when you repress something and a teenager and you say no, well, what happens when you do that in your own self? Like there's a
Mhm.
feeling that keeps coming up and you repressing it gets bigger and it becomes, it becomes a giant mountain. And so for me, having the tools to be able to soften that
Yeah.
is really nice. But here's the thing, for the longest time, I gaslit myself. My big fear that I was one of them I was working around was getting on an airplane, and I'd get on that airplane and I had all the medicine that this thing needed up here, my conscious brain. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
get on there and I'd say, hey, no, we're good. It's okay this time. I have tools for us. We're going to be okay. And I'd get on that plane and I'd start reading off like only this many planes crash per year, only the farther. And I'm like, my body's like, you put me in danger again. You told me you wouldn't. You said
Yep.
it's going to be different this time. And I gaslit my poor self, making this whole thing bigger. So after, just growing it and growing it, my body learned to not trust me because it was trying to
Mm-hmm.
keep me safe. And I had assured it, I got you, but I was using conscious tools.
Yeah.
Getting the
Right.
story going. I was
Intellect.
using
Yeah.
that to fix a wound that was in my subconscious.
In your
And
subconscious.
but I needed to drop out of the story and into this body, the one
Yep.
that's trying to protect me, the one that freaks out on an airplane. Um, and I needed to reassure her, but I now I'm excited with this, getting both sides. This is, I mean, you could any crossbody
Yeah. The
movement. You're
tapping. Yeah.
getting,
And that's Kundalini yoga does the same thing. There's cross body stuff that you do in
yeah, could
Kundalini
be
yoga, which is, and it's
paddleboarding.
all this kind of
Yeah,
stuff. And yeah. So again, different lineages that are doing the same thing and
yeah,
the effect is the same,
yeah.
right?
And we
But
now have science, which is, I mean, we didn't need it to catch up, but it's cool and it does. And that's what the body keeps the score is. It literally talks about how on the right side of your brain, your amygdala starts freaking out and it's overworking. And so it shuts down your time sequencing part of your brain. This part of your brain is first this and second that. And then Friday, well, over here, it was purple and it was smelled like lavender and it's the details. Well, when this is freaking out, it shuts down the time sequencing. So you make a wonky memory of
and that's
uh,
conditioning
it's
in a nutshell.
yeah, like it's years and years and centuries of inherited funky memories of like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's an airplane. Airplanes mean crash and
Yeah.
forest means bear. But then when you can go in and get both sides of the brain online and rework that and soften it and give it space so it's not repressed, you're doing all those things. And that no, I didn't know that piece. And so I
Yeah.
was like, I want to heal and I want to do this work, but I don't know what giving it space means. And so I think that I don't know, hopefully
Dropping in,
help
yeah,
somebody.
it's incorporating the stuff that you have in your subconscious, and we hold our subconscious in our bodies. And that is, I mean, ultimately what ends up happening to most people in our culture because they're not aware of that. Everything you just talked about is that, and even most psychotherapy doesn't address that unless you're doing EMDR, unless you're doing, most psychotherapy only works with what we're conscious, yeah, the mind, on the level of the thinking mind. Um, I'm not hating on it. I have
Yeah,
lots of people that I adore who are therapists and people
yeah,
I adore
there's a
who
piece
have
of that
had,
that's amazing,
yeah,
like
it makes us able to cope
it's
with life much better.
yeah,
Um, the healing though, so if you look at the whole, if you go through your whole life, which most people do, having that happen where you are not able to, the amygdala is going nuts, the thinking mind gets shut down and it has to tell a story. It has to connect to a story in order to calm the amygdala, right? Then that becomes your conditioning. Those stories become your conditioning. They become your identity. And we all are cut off from
they
an
become your familiar
embodied
hells
sense.
that you
Yes,
go to
it's
keep you
it's
safe.
ego, right?
Yeah.
We get cut off from the embodied sense of who we actually are, which is very much rooted in that ancient part of our brain that is connected to earth and nature and animals and right. And then it's our thinking mind that enables us to be aware of ourselves.
Mhm.
So
And they have to dance in unison.
they have to dance in unison. Right now, there's an imbalance, massive. I mean, not just right now. For the last 5,000 years, there's been a massive imbalance, and it's not just in America. You know,
Well, I hope we can figure it out. I My takeaway from the Field Museum was that the dinosaurs were around for 180 million years, guys, and we've only been here for how many? We're going on 60 million.
yeah.
Like, I think that, I'm going to be a little embarrassed if lizard brains live longer than we do.
I mean, we are rapidly destroying our environment.
It's so sad. We are doing it. And
Yeah,
we are doing it. And it feels so good to say that out loud.
yeah.
We are.
KT says humans are a virus, and he's right. And the way that we're existing as humans right now, with only using one part of our brain function, one half of it, is a virus. Then we
Yeah.
become a virus. If
Yes,
we can bring the
absolutely.
rest of us
Okay.
online, then we won't be such a virus.
Yeah, we're out of tune.
Part two. Anyway, this is fun.
Yeah, I'm having fun. Are you guys having fun? You
I have
guys?
to pee so bad.
That's just gonna be our checks and balances. Is all the things we're drinking, and it'll be like, and that's a wrap. Because
All
we're
right.
not taking you guys to the bathroom with us. That's
Yeah.
just weird.
I'm trying to think if there's any like things that I'm supposed to say for my quote unquote business. Um, I don't know. I got
Yeah,
this
the
training coming
classes.
up
Yeah,
for
you
the
talked
year of
about.
2025 ahead, and if you sign up for that, you get a discount on a personal reading for
Mhm.
2025 year ahead as it shows up in your chart. If you're interested in me doing another level one, so you can follow through with level two and level three for this full package astrology training, shoot me a message, Danielle at DNAempowerment.com. If you have anything that you want us to riff on, because that's what we're doing here, if you haven't noticed, is we are riffing. Any questions, any things that confuse you, if we have been confusing, email me and let me know, Danielle at DNAempowerment.com.
I
And
was gonna say, is there another way to contact you? Because when you say email, I'm like, I ain't doing that. Like maybe
I
like
mean, Instagram.
okay, so
Instagram is
or
great.
Instagram or okay,
Yep. And Instagram, do the DNA empowerment Instagram, please.
okay,
Um, because if you message my personal Instagram, I won't see it. It'll go to the junk folder. But if you do the business page, DNA empowerment, I will see it, hopefully. But if you really, really want to send a message, if you really want to make sure I see it, it's got to be Danielle at DNAempowerment.com. Or you can send me a message through my website, which is DNAempowerment.com. Um, the last episode was not on Spotify because I am not technologically savvy, and apparently you Spotify does not accept things in the file format that I uploaded with video. So hopefully this one will be on Spotify if I can figure it out, which means I'm going to ask somebody to help me figure it out because who
ask
knows how to
me.
do it. But it is going to be on YouTube. If you want to go to YouTube at DNA Empowerment, it is going to be on Apple Podcasts and a bunch of other ones that I've never heard of, but it goes to them. So if you have podcasts somewhere else, it's very likely there. Spotify is the one that I'm having problems with, but I'm going to figure it out. So
Nice.
I think that's it.
Yay. Okay. Well, this has been fun. Thanks for
Thanks so
hanging
much,
out in
time.
this space with us.
I appreciate you, Lyndsy.
I love you so much.
I love
Oh
you
my
so
gosh.
much.
Take care. And all of you take care. And you take care, Miss. And we'll see you guys. The plan is next week, but
Next week,
who
who
knows?
knows? Bye.